You know what the best smart home automation is? The one you completely forget exists. The light that turns on before your hand even reaches the switch. The room that dims itself right when you're winding down for the night, without you touching a thing. That's the kind of lighting we're building today. I'm Keiko Tanaka, and I specialize in smart home systems that feel less like tech and more like atmosphere. You're listening to the Smart Home Setup Podcast. Quick heads up before we get going, everything you're about to hear, the research, the data, the entire script, that's all human verified and written by real authors. The voice you're hearing, though, that's AI generated. Just wanted to be upfront about that. Now, if you've been listening for a while, thank you. It genuinely means a lot that you keep coming back. And if you're new here, welcome. Really glad you found the show. We release new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and each one digs into a different corner of smart home tech, automation, protocols, all the stuff that makes these systems actually work. All right, let's get into it. Today we're talking about smart lighting automations using if-then logic and scenes, and how to build them so they feel invisible instead of intrusive. The most successful smart lighting automations are the ones you never consciously notice, the ones that read the rhythm of your day and respond before you reach for a switch. Learning to build automations around if-then logic and scenes transforms lighting from a task you manage into an atmospheric layer that shifts with intention. This guide walks you through the logic structures, protocol considerations, and invisible design strategies that make smart lighting automations feel effortless rather than technological. You'll need a working understanding of your smart home hub's interface, whether that's Home Assistant, Habitat Elevation, Samsung SmartThings, or a platform-specific controller, and roughly 2 to 3 hours to build, test, and refine your first set of automations. The reward is a home that responds to presence, time, and activity without visible control panels or voice commands disrupting the mood. Let me walk you through what you'll need to get this right. A smart home hub or controller that supports automation logic. That could be Home Assistant, Habitat Elevation, Samsung SmartThings, Apple Home with HomePod, or Amazon Echo with Zigbee or Matter support. You'll also want smart bulbs, switches, or dimmers using Zigbee, Z-Wave, Thread, or Matter protocols. Wi-Fi bulbs work, but they introduce latency and network congestion, which I'll get into in a moment. Motion sensors are essential, and Zigbee or Z-Wave options are preferred for response times under 100 milliseconds. Thread and Matter sensors are emerging, but ecosystem support varies as of early 2026. Contact sensors for doors and windows are optional but valuable for entry and exit routines. Illuminance or lux sensors help if you want automations to factor in natural light levels, and many motion sensors include built-in lux detection. You'll also need time and schedule access within your automation platform, which is standard in all major hubs, plus mobile app access to your hub for testing and adjustments. And of course, basic familiarity with your hub's automation editor, whether that's visual blocks, YAML configurations, or a graphical interface. Now, let's talk about understanding the if-then structure and choosing your automation platform. Every smart lighting automation follows the same fundamental structure. If certain conditions are met, then certain actions execute. The sophistication comes from layering conditions and defining fallback behaviors when networks lag or devices don't respond. Here's a simple example. If motion is detected in the hallway and the time is between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. and the lux level is below 10, then turn on the hallway lights to 20% warm white. Wait 3 minutes with no motion, then turn off the hallway lights.
Your hub's automation engine determines how many conditions you can stack, how precisely you can control timing, and what happens when a sensor drops offline. For lighting automations specifically, prioritize hubs that support local processing, meaning no cloud dependency, and sub-second response times. Here's what you need to know about protocols. Zigbee and Z-Wave handle lighting automations with 50 to 150 millisecond latency when the mesh network is healthy. Matter 1.4 over Thread shows similar performance, but as of 2026, not all lighting manufacturers support the full Matter scene and automation spec. Some devices still rely on manufacturer apps for complex logic. Wi-Fi bulbs work well for scenes you trigger manually, but introduce 300 to 800 millisecond delays in motion-triggered automations due to cloud routing and network overhead. Choose your platform based on the protocols your existing devices use. If you're starting fresh, Zigbee or Matter over Thread offers the best balance of responsiveness, mesh reliability, and discrete device availability. And here's an invisible alternative to consider. Most hubs can be concealed in cabinetry, media consoles, or utility closets. The only visible element should be sensors, and even those can be recessed or disguised. Moving on to mapping your lighting zones and defining the mood of each space. Before writing a single automation rule, walk through your home at different times of day and observe how natural light shifts, where shadows gather, and when you instinctively reach for switches. The goal is to identify zones and the emotional temperature each space needs to hold. A kitchen might need 3 distinct modes: bright task lighting for morning prep at 5,000 Kelvin and 100% brightness, ambient warmth during dinner at 2,700 Kelvin and 60%, and a low night light path at 2,200 Kelvin and 10% for late-night water runs. A bedroom needs gentle wake lighting that ramps slowly, evening wind-down tones that suppress blue wavelengths, and near darkness for middle-of-the-night bathroom trips. Sketch out zones and assign each a shorthand: kitchen task, kitchen ambient, kitchen night path. These become your scenes, preset combinations of brightness, color temperature, and which fixtures are active. Most platforms let you save scenes as reusable blocks that automations can call. Here's a protocol note. Scenes stored locally on a Zigbee hub execute almost instantaneously, under 100 milliseconds for an entire room to transition. Scenes that require cloud API calls, which are common with some Wi-Fi bulbs, can take 1 to 3 seconds to fully render, creating a perceptible lag that breaks immersion.
In one Pacific Northwest remodel, we hid LED light strips behind crown molding in a dining room, programmed to shift from cool white during the day to amber at dusk. The automation reads time and lux level. The light source itself is completely invisible, casting indirect glow upward. The space feels responsive, without appearing controlled. Now let's build your first motion-activated lighting automation with layered conditions. Start with a high-traffic transitional space, a hallway, entryway, or staircase, where motion-activated lighting provides immediate value. The simplest version is this. If motion is detected in the hallway, then turn on hallway lights to 100%. This works, but it's blunt. Layering conditions adds nuance. If motion is detected in the hallway and the time is between 6 a.m. and 10 p.m., which are daytime hours, and the lux level is below 50, darker than ambient daylight threshold, then turn on hallway lights to 80% brightness at 4,000 Kelvin. Wait 2 minutes with no motion detected, then turn off hallway lights. Now add a nighttime variant. If motion is detected in the hallway and the time is between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m., nighttime hours, then turn on hallway lights to 15% brightness at 2,200 Kelvin. Wait 90 seconds with no motion detected, then turn off hallway lights. You've created context-aware lighting that adjusts to circadian rhythm and actual visibility needs. The lux condition prevents lights from firing during bright afternoons when they're unnecessary, a detail that matters for both energy use and the feeling that your home isn't overreacting. Here's what to expect for latency. Zigbee and Z-Wave motion sensors typically report state changes in 50 to 150 milliseconds. The hub processes the logic and sends the lighting command in another 30 to 100 milliseconds. Well-tuned automations feel instantaneous. You enter a space and light appears as if anticipating you. Wi-Fi sensors and cloud-dependent automations introduce 300 millisecond to 2-second delays, which feels sluggish. And here's the fallback behavior to keep in mind. If a motion sensor goes offline, maybe from a dead battery or mesh interference, the automation won't trigger. The practical solution is manual switches as backup. Smart switches that retain physical control ensure you're never locked out by automation failure. Let's talk about creating time-based scene transitions for morning and evening routines. Motion-triggered automations handle transient spaces. Time-based scene automations shape the atmosphere of spaces where you linger, living rooms, bedrooms, kitchens during meal prep. A morning routine might look like this. If the time is 6:30 a.m. on weekdays, then activate the morning wake scene in the bedroom. Bedside lamps ramp from 0% to 40% over 10 minutes at 3000 Kelvin. Hallway lights turn on to 60% at 4000 Kelvin. Kitchen under-cabinet lights turn on to 80% at 4500 Kelvin.
The ramp is critical. Abrupt brightness feels jarring, especially in bedrooms. Most platforms support gradual transitions. Zigbee and Matter lights handle smooth ramps natively, while some Wi-Fi bulbs step through brightness increments visibly. An evening wind-down automation might work like this. If the time is 8:30 p.m., then activate the evening settle scene in living areas. Overhead lighting dims to 30% and shifts to 2500 Kelvin over 15 minutes. Accent lighting, hidden LED strips, and concealed uplights turns on to 50% at 2200 Kelvin. Kitchen task lights turn off. This gradual shift signals the day's close without requiring conscious intervention. You're guiding occupants toward rest through light alone. No announcements, no app interactions. Here's an invisible alternative. Time-based automations work beautifully with concealed lighting sources, cove lighting, toe kick LEDs, in-wall recessed fixtures. The effect is environmental rather than fixture-focused. Next up, adding conditional logic for occupancy and override scenarios. The automations above work until they don't, until you're watching a film in the living room at 8:30 p.m. and the lights suddenly dim to 30%, ruining contrast, or until you're hosting a late dinner and don't want nighttime dim modes activating. Occupancy conditions and manual override flags add intelligence. If the time is 8:30 p.m. and the living room occupancy sensor shows occupied for more than 10 minutes and manual override mode is off, then activate the evening settle scene. The occupancy check prevents the automation from firing if the space has been empty, useful if you're traveling or spending the evening elsewhere. The manual override is a virtual switch. Most hubs support these as Boolean flags. You can toggle via app or voice when you want automations to pause. Some platforms call this guest mode or party mode. For film watching, a more elegant solution is a media playing condition. If the time is 8:30 p.m. and the living room TV media state is not playing, then activate the evening settle scene. This requires your TV or media device to report state to the hub. Chromecast, Apple TV, and some smart TVs expose this natively. Others need HDMI CEC adapters or IR blasters. The result is automation that respects context rather than blindly following a schedule. Here's the fallback behavior. If the occupancy sensor fails to report, the time-based automation will still fire. You may want a redundant condition, like motion detected in the last 30 minutes, or simply accept occasional false triggers as acceptable friction. Perfect automation is an illusion. Graceful degradation is the realistic goal. Now let's build entry and exit automations using contact sensors. Contact door sensors add spatial awareness to your lighting logic, enabling automations that respond to arrivals and departures, moments when lighting can either welcome or conserve.
An entry automation might work like this. If the front door contact sensor changes to open and the time is after sunset or the lux level is below 20, then activate the welcome home scene. Entryway lights turn on to 80% at 3500 Kelvin, hallway lights turn on to 60% at 3500 Kelvin,
Living room accent lights turn on to 40% at 2700 Kelvin. Wait 10 minutes, then dim entryway and hallway lights to 30%. This creates a lit pathway that anticipates movement through the home, then settles into ambient mode once you've dropped bags and removed shoes. The Lux condition prevents the automation from firing on bright afternoons when natural light is sufficient. An exit automation for energy savings could look like this. If the front door contact sensor changes to closed and the back door contact sensor remains closed for 5 minutes and no motion is detected in any room for 5 minutes, then activate the away scene. Turn off all lights except security perimeter, front porch, and back patio at 10%. Set an override flag to prevent time-based automations. This assumes departure, a risky assumption. If someone's still home but stationary, reading or napping, you'll plunge them into darkness. A safer approach is a geofencing condition, all household smartphones outside a 500-meter radius, though that requires mobile app location permissions and reliable GPS or Wi-Fi triangulation. Here's the protocol consideration. Contact sensors using Zigbee or Z-Wave report state changes in under 100 milliseconds. Thread-based Matter sensors show similar performance, but ecosystem support is still fragmentary in early 2026. Apple Home handles Thread contact sensors well. SmartThings and Home Assistant support is improving, but may require Matter.4 hub firmware updates. Let's talk about testing latency, adjusting timing, and identifying points of failure. Once your automations are running, walk through your home deliberately, triggering each automation in sequence. Time the response with your phone's stopwatch. Motion detected to light on, door opened to scene activated. Anything over 500 milliseconds will feel sluggish. Anything over 1 second feels broken. If latency is high, the culprit is usually mesh network congestion or weak signal strength. Add a Zigbee or Z-Wave repeater, a smart plug works, halfway between the sensor and hub. It could also be cloud-dependent devices. If your hub routes commands through a manufacturer's cloud API, you're at the mercy of internet speed and server response times. Switching to locally controlled devices eliminates this. Or it might be hub processing overhead. Platforms running dozens of automations simultaneously may prioritize by rule complexity. Simplify conditions or upgrade to more powerful hub hardware.
Test failure modes intentionally. Pull the battery from a motion sensor mid-automation. Does the light stay on indefinitely, or does a backup timer turn it off after 10 minutes? Disconnect your hub from Wi-Fi. Do Zigbee and Z-Wave automations continue running locally, or do they freeze? Here's a fallback behavior checklist. Manual switches remain functional if the hub goes offline. Lights default to a usable state, on at 50% and 3000 Kelvin if automation logic crashes. Backup timers prevent lights from staying on indefinitely if sensors fail. Critical pathways like stairs and exits have redundant triggers or stay lit during uncertain states. Walk your home at 2 a.m. when you're groggy and test whether nighttime automations provide enough light to navigate safely without fully waking you up. Adjust brightness and timing based on how the space feels, not what the numbers suggest. Now, refining based on seasonal light shifts and household rhythms. Your first set of automations will feel precise for about 2 weeks, then start to drift out of sync as sunrise times shift, household routines change, or you realize a motion sensor's placement catches too much incidental movement. Set a recurring calendar reminder every 6 weeks to review and adjust. Update sunrise and sunset offset conditions as seasonal light changes. Most hubs support dynamic sunrise and sunset variables. Use those instead of hard-coded times. Adjust lux thresholds if you've added window treatments or landscaping that alters natural light infiltration. Revisit motion sensor timeout durations. A 2-minute delay might feel right in summer when spaces are warm and inviting, but too abrupt in winter when you linger longer. Test edge cases, weekend mornings when routines are looser, holiday gatherings when spaces are used differently, travel periods when automations should pause or shift to security-focused modes. One client found that her kitchen automation, designed to provide bright task lighting at 6 a.m., became oppressive in winter when dawn arrived after 7:30 a.m. We shifted the condition from time is 6 a.m. to time is 30 minutes before calculated sunrise, or motion detected in kitchen after 6 a.m., preserving the wake-up function while respecting the season's darker mornings. Here's an invisible refinement to consider. As you adjust timing and brightness, consider whether visible switches and sensors could be further concealed. A motion sensor initially placed on a shelf for testing might be relocated to a ceiling mount or recessed into trim, reducing its visual footprint while maintaining detection range. Let me share some pro tips and common mistakes. Layer redundancy without creating conflicts. It's tempting to have both motion-based and time-based automations controlling the same lights, but overlapping triggers cause flickering or competing commands. Use priority flags or mutual exclusion conditions. If motion automation is active, time-based scenes defer. Don't overtune lux thresholds. A lux sensor reading 48 when your threshold is 50 will trigger lights. A reading of 52 won't. That 4 lux difference is imperceptible to your eye, but creates inconsistent behavior. Use wider thresholds, lux below 30 versus lux above 70, to avoid edge case flickering. Avoid long fade times in transient spaces. A 15-minute ramp works beautifully for bedroom wake lighting. It's maddening in a hallway where you're passing through in 20 seconds, and the light only reaches 10% before you leave. Motion sensor placement matters more than you think. A sensor aimed at a doorway will trigger the instant you enter. A sensor aimed at the center of a room means you'll walk several feet in darkness before detection. Test sightlines and detection angles before finalizing placement. Here's a common mistake: forgetting that Zigbee and Z-Wave use different radio frequencies and can't directly trigger each other. If your motion sensor is Zigbee and your light switch is Z-Wave, the hub acts as translator, adding 20 to 50 milliseconds of latency. Keeping devices within the same protocol family minimizes lag. Another common mistake is building automations around voice commands or app buttons as primary triggers. These are override mechanisms, not daily interfaces. If your household is still saying, "Alexa, turn on the living room" every evening, your automations aren't anticipating needs. They're just remote controls with extra steps. Here's an observation from a recent consultation. A couple insisted their smart lighting wasn't working because they constantly had to override automations. The issue wasn't the technology. It was that automations were built around their schedule 2 years ago. Their routines had shifted, earlier wake times, later dinners, but the automations hadn't. Lighting that feels intelligent is lighting that evolves. Let's go through some frequently asked questions. What's the difference between a scene and an automation in smart lighting? A scene is a saved snapshot of lighting states, which bulbs are on, their brightness, color temperature, that you can recall instantly with a single command, like evening relax or bright work mode. An automation is the if-then logic that decides when to activate a scene or other lighting action, based on triggers like motion, time, or sensor data. Scenes are the destination. Automations are the rules that get you there without manual input. Do smart lighting automations work if my internet goes down? It depends on your protocol and hub. Zigbee, Z-Wave, and thread-based automations run locally on your hub and continue functioning without internet. Motion sensors, time triggers, and lighting commands all stay operational. Wi-Fi bulbs and cloud-dependent platforms, like some LifeX or TP-Link Casa setups, may lose automation capability entirely without internet, though some offer limited local control. If reliability matters, prioritize local processing hubs and non-Wi-Fi protocols. How do I prevent smart lighting automations from fighting each other or causing flickering? Conflicting automations happen when multiple rules try to control the same light simultaneously. One says turn on to 80%, while another says turn off after 2 minutes of no motion. Solutions include priority hierarchies. Manual overrides always win, then motion-based, then time-based. Mutual exclusion flags. If automation A is active, automation B pauses. And single source of truth design. One master automation per zone that evaluates all conditions before acting. Most platforms let you set conditions like only run this automation if another automation is not active. What's a realistic response time for motion-activated smart lighting automations? Zigbee and Z-Wave automations with a healthy mesh network respond in 100 to 300 milliseconds total, fast enough to feel instantaneous. Thread over matter shows similar performance where fully supported. Wi-Fi bulbs or cloud-dependent automations often take 500 milliseconds to 2 seconds, which feels noticeably laggy. You'll walk into a dark room, pause, then see lights turn on. Latency compounds with weak mesh networks, hub processing delays, or congested Wi-Fi. Here's the summary. Building smart lighting automations with if-then logic and scenes isn't about accumulating triggers. It's about designing invisible choreography that responds to how your household actually moves, rests, and works. The most refined automations are the ones that anticipate needs without announcing themselves, using layered conditions, protocol-aware device selection, and fallback behaviors that degrade gracefully when sensors fail or networks lag. Start with one high-impact space, an entryway, a hallway, a bedroom, and build outward only after that first automation feels effortless. Refinement comes from observation, seasonal adjustments, and a willingness to simplify logic when complexity creates more friction than function. The goal isn't a home that responds to every input, it's a home where light feels native to the rhythm of living.
That wraps up this episode of the Smart Home Setup Podcast. Thanks for listening all the way through. Just a reminder, we drop new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, so there's always something new coming your way. If you found this episode useful, I'd really appreciate it if you could leave a 5-star rating and write a quick review. It actually makes a huge difference in helping other people find the show, and honestly, it's one of the best ways to support what we're doing here. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe or follow so you get notified the second a new episode goes live. Talk to you soon.